Today is August 16th in the 19th week of Ordinary Time. Today's Gospel, St. Matthew plots out an instruction that Jesus gives his disciples when they find themselves in a situation that one among them is fallen into sin. He gives them, if you will, a strategy of correction. And he first tells them to go privately to that brother or sister and point out to them what they are doing wrong, what is leading them away from God, to bring them back. The whole idea is, how do we get them to come back to God? But he says, if the person rejects your correction, then bring 2 or 3 together and privately discuss this with him again. And then finally, if the person rejects the advice, to bring it to the whole community, the church, where they can hopefully motivate this person to change the course of their life. It's interesting to think that we are asked or directed to start correcting one another. And you could think how that could be very destructive in a community. So, like, who are you to tell me what to do? You're not so perfect yourself. I could just hear that in the back of my head, thinking of that. But St. Thomas Aquinas picks this theme of fraternal correction up. He deals with 8 articles in his Summa on this small little passage from St. Matthew's Gospel. And the first thing St. Thomas Aquinas says, you only correct if it's a serious sin. Small faults can be dealt with in other ways. So first of all, it's got to be a serious matter. And another point that he makes is that there should be reasonable hope that the person is going to receive your advice and correction. If the person is so obstinate, it's not very helpful to do that. He also is very concerned that the person's honor, their good name, be protected. So you should always be trying to do this discreetly and only, if necessary, gather more people into awareness of a person's sin. Lastly, which I find very interesting that he raises in the Summa, is this a charitable thing to do? Is this a loving thing to do, to go and correct somebody else? And he says, absolutely yes. The worst thing that could happen to a person is they would lose their relationship with God. And so this is an apostolic act of charity when we go to a brother and sister in charity and point out a serious shortfall in their spiritual journey. The hope is always that the person will correct their life and be more vibrant in the Christian community. And he always ends, St. Thomas, with his typical moderation. He says, always try to keep it moderate, not make these things explosive. It's kind of strange that we talk about this today, because in the modern world, everything's out in public. If you're not on YouTube or Facebook or on the national news, it just doesn't seem to be real. So we're always talking about people's failings, divorces, affairs, corruption in the news. But that's not the way of Jesus. Jesus is discreet, loving, and hopeful.